One of the most misunderstood concepts in the manifestation world is the idea of frequency. So, you've probably heard somebody say, protect your energy or raise your vibration. And if you've watched any of my past videos, you've heard me say, you must become whatever it is you're trying to manifest. Now, these sayings are said so often that they're almost buzzwords, but very few people take the time to actually understand why they're used and the meanings behind them. So if you've ever been confused about the concept of frequency, you're not alone. I too was once very confused. Today, I'm going to combine two perspectives that are usually discussed separately: science and spirituality. We're going to explore what frequency means from a spiritual perspective and how neuroscience and psychologists can teach us about our thoughts, emotions, and actions, and how both of these brought together can influence our everyday life. First, I want to make this very, very clear. My intention here is not to try to convince you that manifestation is magic or to leave it all to science alone. I truly believe that there's value in both. So science is going to help us understand the mechanisms behind the change, while spirituality allows us to connect with the meaning, the intention, and the possibilities. So when we combine both of these together, manifestation becomes less woo-woo, right? So it becomes less wishful thinking and more intentional transformation. Your frequency is not something that you just flip on overnight. It is a collective of your everyday behaviors, your thoughts, and your actions, and what you do to reinforce these on a daily basis. This is why it is so important to understand this. Your frequency becomes the foundation of your entire life. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Rori, spiritual coach and a manifestation mentor. Let's dive right in. What is frequency? Let's begin by defining the word. In physics, frequency is referred to the amount of times a wave repeats itself in a specific period of time. It's a measurable property for sound waves, light waves, radio waves, and other physical phenomena. When we speak about frequency in the personal growth communities or the spiritual world, we use it a little bit different. So they're not referring to it as a measurable physical wave emitted by our thoughts. We're referring to it as your internal state. So it's your reoccurring patterns of your thinking, your feeling, and your behaviors. So in other words, your frequency is your baseline. It is the emotional and psychological state that you refer to the most. It is the lens on which you perceive your experiences. It is the habits you practice without even thinking. And it is the beliefs that you have about yourself and the world. So spiritually, we could describe this as the energy you are bringing into your life. Psychologically, we could describe this as the combination of your mindset, emotional intelligence, learned behaviors, and subconscious programming. So different languages, very similar ideas. One of the reasons this concept is so important is because human beings are creatures of patterns. And then we take those patterns and we form habits. And then those habits become automatic responses, automatic behaviors. So this is why our life is not shaped by the goals that we set. It is shaped by the patterns that we're consistently practicing. So for example, if you're consistently showing gratitude, confidence, love, self-respect, those strengthen over time. Just like if you're consistently practicing avoidance or fear, self-criticism, they also strengthen over time. But here is the beauty. Our brain has something called neuroplasticity, and it's the brain's ability to change its neural pathways over time. So for example, when you are reinforcing, let's say you're thinking about something all the time, you are reinforcing it. You're behaving the same way. It's a reinforcement, right? You're repeating those behaviors. They become automatic. You create neural pathways that become automatic behaviors, which also shows that we have the ability to change our behaviors. You create new neural pathways that change the way you think. So that's why change could become difficult. Not because you're only learning a new practice, you're learning something new, but what you're doing is you are gradually building new neural pathways while also allowing the older, much more well-established pathways to weaken with lack of use. So, from a spiritual perspective, this way of thinking, feeling, and behaving is what people refer to as your frequency. This doesn't happen from one affirmation. This is created by the patterns that you embody over time. So, that brings us to the most important ideas in manifestation. You do not become a match for the future because you occasionally think positive thoughts. You become a match through your consistent internal transformation. And that's exactly where real changes begin. So now that we know what frequency is, let's talk about where it comes from. So people think to change, you need willpower, which is very helpful for motivation, although it stems much deeper than that, from the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind stores your memories, your habits, your beliefs, and your emotional patterns that you've developed over time. So let's just say you are driving your car on your way home that you take every day. You don't even have to think about, oh, I need to turn the steering wheel. I need to press the gas. I should turn the turn signal on. You don't have to think about it because it becomes an automatic behavior. So the same thing happens with your emotions, with your habits, and with your beliefs. So if you spent your whole entire life thinking love is hard to come by, you are not worthy of it, money is scarce, what happens is these continue to show up in your life. You may consciously want something different, but your subconscious mind doesn't believe that you're worthy of it. So they're not aligned. Your conscious and subconscious mind are not aligned. Your subconscious mind will always win. So our brains are programmed to keep us alive. And to do that, they go to what is safe and familiar. So when you create automatic habits for yourself, this is a safe and familiar space. It's always going to revert back to that place. From a spiritual perspective, we might say that you're operating on an old energetic pattern. From a psychological perspective, you're operating from an established neutral pathway that was learned through conditioning. Again, different languages describing remarkably similar ideas. One of the most fascinating discoveries in neuroscience is that our brains are consistently making predictions. So instead of waiting for life to happen and then responding, what happens is our brain is automatically using past experiences to automatically respond. This process is often referred to as predictive processing. Think of it as your brain creating an internal model of the world. That model is shaped by your previous experiences, your relationships, your environments, and the beliefs you've developed over time. So this purpose is very simple. So it's the reason for this is to help us respond more quickly and efficiently. Most of the time, this is so incredibly useful. It allows you to recognize faces, learn new languages, and navigate familiar situations without having to consciously overanalyze every situation. Although here's an issue. It also keeps us emotionally stuck. So if you've experienced rejection over and over again, your brain may begin to predict rejection before it even happened. Wild. So crazy. I love the brain. It's just so crazy. If you've lived through financial instability, your brain may retain on high alert around money. You may start feeling anxious or insecure or not worthy of money, even if your circumstances have improved. Now, this doesn't happen because you're attracting negativity in your life. It is because your brain goes to what is familiar. It goes to the information that it's experienced in the past. This is one reason lasting transformation requires way more than just positive thinking. It requires creating an entire new experience that your brain begins to think is normal and safe. Remember, our brains are here to keep us alive, not keep us happy and successful, to keep us alive. It will consistently revert back to whatever feels safe and comfortable. So if you create a new story, a new belief for your brain, it will start to adapt this new belief and it will become familiar. So, spiritually, this is often described as a new energetic match, while scientifically, it's a gradual process of changing deeply integrated patterns through experiences. So, whether you describe it as a rewiring your brain or raising your frequency, the underlying principle is the same. Constant internal change leads to different external choices, and different choices create different results. Many people believe that manifestation starts with a thought. Well, thoughts and emotions go hand in hand. Your thought will influence your emotions will influence the way your body responds. So, for example, let's think about fear. When we think about fear, our breathing gets a little faster, we tend to turn in, our muscles turn to tense, and our brain prepares for a threat. If we think about something that makes us feel calm and grateful, our breathing slows down, we make better decisions, we can connect with people better, we're more relaxed. Now, this is why emotions are so important. This is what understanding the way you feel is so important. Not because it magically sends a signal to the universe, but what it happens is it influences your psychology, your behaviors, and the patterns you repeat every single day. And then over time, this is what shapes your life. From a spiritual perspective, emotions contribute to the energetic state you constantly embody. And from a psychological perspective, they influence attention, memory, learning, and behavior. So when science and spirituality are viewed together, I believe frequency becomes much more easier to understand. Because it's not about one thought and it's not about one affirmation. It's the constant pattern of what you believe, what you feel, and how you respond, and what you repeat every single day. And those patterns become the foundation in which you create your own life. One of the biggest misunderstandings in the manifestation world is that you need to be high vibrating frequency all the time. Well, this is not true. In fact, consistently trying to force yourself to be positive is actually pushing your manifestations away. So let's talk about why. So, as human beings, we were gifted with a wide range of emotions. A wide range: happy, sad, frustrating, guilty, right? All of the above. You can name a billion. But as humans, we are supposed to feel these emotions. So suppressing these emotions are only going to push your manifestations further away from you. From a psychological perspective, emotions provide information, right? So they're signals to what is wrong, what needs are not being met, what boundary was crossed, something has happened. From a spiritual perspective, we are gifted with beautiful emotions that allow us to navigate where we go on our path. Okay, so problems arise and we either suppress them or we face them. In the spiritual world, you face them. You sit with your problems. You do not suppress them. You do not ignore them. You embrace them. Because what this does is it allows you to become stronger, to identify your emotions, navigate them, and allow them to pass. Something beautiful that I have learned is our emotions last for 90 seconds tops. So let's say you're mad. That madness, the anger, sits there for 90 seconds. And then what happens is we linger on that energy. We put so much energy into that feeling that it expands, sometimes days, weeks, years, someone's whole entire life. So learning how to regulate your emotions is so important in the manifestation process. So there is something really important is true emotion regulation looks very different for everybody. Okay, it means acknowledging what you're feeling without allowing it to define who you are. There's an important difference between saying, I feel anxious today, and saying, I'm an anxious person. You see that? So one describes a temporary emotional experience, and the other credits an identity. The same is true for fear. There's simply experience moving through you. That's why people say, I'm going through this. You are. You're going through it. There's an end. You're not staying in this space forever. You're moving through your emotions. If you suppress your emotions, they just bury deep down. It's just energy stored. Energy can never be destroyed. So they just store into places and come out in the worst ways. Sometimes you have no control when or how they come out. When we're able to control our temporary emotional experiences, meaning we're able to sit with them and allow them to pass, in the spiritual community, this is called alignment. Alignment is not pretending that fear doesn't exist. It's not allowing fear to take over your every thought, to shut you down emotionally. It is allowing yourself to sit in the discomfort, understand what is trying to reach you, observe and process the message, consciously choose your next step based on your value rather than an automatic response. So that's a very different process than forcing yourself to smile or to ignore what's going on. You're aware of what's going on, but you're not allowing it to take over your entire being. Your frequency is not determined whether you have a bad day or not. It's determined by the patterns you consistently return to. So let's just say you stubbed your toe. Is your whole day screwed? Is your whole day ruined? Or are you going to get over it in a couple seconds and go on with your day? That is called emotional control. Are you aligned or are you not? The goal is not perfection, and that's something very important to stress. It's progress, it's awareness. You will never achieve perfection, but you can achieve awareness. The goal isn't constant happiness. The goal is becoming emotionally resilient. Because resilience allows us to experience life challenges without losing sight of who we are. And that in itself is so important because that is what creates long-lasting alignment. As this video comes to an end, I want to leave you with this. Your frequency is not turned on overnight. It is cultivated through your beliefs, your actions, and your emotions that you regulate on a daily basis. Manifestation is not about becoming somebody else. It is about removing the conditioning, the limiting beliefs, and the emotional patterns that have kept you disconnected from who you truly are. If this message resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and follow, and even share with somebody who needs to hear this message. Until next time, please remember this. Your frequency is your foundation. Every thought you nurture, every emotion you learn, every boundary you honor, every promise you keep to yourself is shaping the person you are becoming. Keep growing, keep healing, and keep becoming a match from the life you are creating. Thank you all so much. I truly appreciate your time, energy, and space. Until next time, all the love.